Welcome to the No Balls podcast. Today's a film room episode. I want to go over this Knicks Thunder game that just happened. It was, I would call, a very rough game for the Knicks defensively. There were a little bit more defensive miscues than we've seen recently from them. Film room episode last week did really well, so probably going to be doing these pretty frequently. So it'll be a fun one. All right, so from the top here, I think there's a couple important notes to have on this team before we even go through the film. As you see, it's 2 minutes into the game. They haven't given up a bucket. Obviously, sometimes this team's going to get results, but a lot of the time through the first couple bits of this game, it was OKC missing shots. And we're going to get into the film and just in general talking about this defense. A lot of this boils down to teams making shots or teams missing shots. And that's what all NBA defense is, but I think it's accentuated with the Knicks. A big reason with that right here, Karl-Anthony Towns, he is an awesome player. Awesome player. Defensively, it's kind of a nightmare, okay? Against certain teams, it works perfectly fine, and we're going to talk about that even more. Against this OKC team, it is rough because here, this is a spread pick and roll. Over here, Williams, Wallace, Dort, 40% shooter, 40% shooter, 40% shooter, nowhere to help off of. Okay, so Bridges and Towns have to pretty much guard this by themselves. Otherwise, there's going to be some breakdowns. With Towns, he cannot drop as well, and we're going to see it in the film here. He can't. He has to do this. Okay, he has to come trap, and if you just want more example of this, I think games against the Hawks are very indicative of what happens if Cat is in this deep drop against offensively gifted guards who can pass and score. It ends up in just shot attempts at the rim for Hartenstein, or what would have ended up happening is what happened here with Hart. Let's say Towns was still in a drop and Shea gets further in the paint, and Hartenstein, gets a deep catch, but Hart's there to help Towns here. It ends up in what's probably going to be a Lou Dort or Kason Wallace 3, depending on over here. Clearly, Dort was going to pin in Anunoby. In this situation, Hart ends up getting this deflection anyway. It goes right back to Hartenstein. So defensively, process-wise, Karl-Anthony Towns, they cannot deep drop him against these offensively gifted guards. And I think a lot of what's allowed this Knicks defense to work so far this season is against some teams that don't have these super great guards. They can do that with Towns, and they can get decent results out of it. But in this situation, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and later in the game, he gets into, this mid-range game and, awesome playmaking abilities. But yeah, that's a big thing. Another thing with them before we keep going. We have Towns here. The alternative last season was Hartenstein. With them also was Mitchell Robinson. That ends up being an okay, pretty good shot there for OKC. Mitchell Robinson's out there. That is a significantly more altered shot than when Karl-Anthony Towns is out there. I think that's a big difference point. Mitchell Robinson has this impossible play aspect to his game that I don't think a single Knicks player on defense does, which is important to know. They're ranked 17th in the league defensively. They've hovered around 17 to 12 for the better part of a month now, fluctuating up and down. I would expect them to just probably stay in that range for most of the rest of the season. You look up and down their roster, and they have these good defenders with Anunoby, Bridges, Hart. I think is pretty good. I don't think Brunson gives too much back compared to low activity guard defenders, but it's really hard to build a defensive ecosystem with Towns, who's not a rim protector, and then you go to the bench and it is Precious Achiuwa, who doesn't provide much defensively, and then unproven players like Jericho Sims and Ariel Hawk-Porty out there don't provide much defensively. So yeah, in these type of matchups, it's going to be really hard for the Knicks. There's just a couple possessions in a row where the Knicks end up just scoring. I think this is another one. So right here, they get this switch first. I think this is an important part. Realistically, Anunoby and Bridges are not too much different of players. But then if you see what happens here with Anunoby on the screen, He's a great defensive player. I think he's definitely a better defensive player than Bridges. But for what they're going to need the person defending SGA on a play here to do, Bridges is the guy because Anunoby gets wiped out here. He's so much wider of a guy, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander turns the corner so quick here. Shai Gilgeous is stuck. Cat's kind of out of position here. It's deep drop coverage. He's not covering this. Give up this mid-range shot, okay? Shai shoots 44% on these. He shoots 78% at the rim. That it gets a lot higher when it's one-on-one rim opportunities. Realistically, that's all Cat can do in that situation. That switch kind of kills you. So having guys like Shai here too kind of changes the math of how you want to play things. Hart's all the way over already, right? They're zoning up this court to where he's not going to get a shot attempt. They give him this anyway. And I think the issue here is with Cat, he needs to play a little bit more aggressively on this just because you already have Hart down here. You already have Bridges and Brunson, taking away some space. This is where, this drop doesn't work against these guys, so Cat needs to play to the level, and I think they do a lot better of a job playing to the level for the first half, and then what ends up happening later in the game is, like here he's playing to the level, and right here it ends up in Dort's hands, and they help off of Isaiah Joe. I think that's a bad decision to do that. It ends up in a missed shot and a Aaron Wiggins dunk because Anunoby goes to cover the next close guy. I think here, the best result here is letting Dort shoot this ball, but taking the ball out of Shai's hands is 100% the right decision here. Because, again, if he gets a driving lane right here, right, let's say Cat's staying stuck to Luguentz Dort, then, let's say he's all the way out there, and another part of this too. Dort, he gets running full speed into this screen. That never stops. It's an illegal screen. This doesn't get called ever. So, regardless, you need to make work of it. Cat has to slide over. And my screen keeps exiting. Whatever. Cat has to slide over. Otherwise, this is a wide open lane. Or it's an Aaron Wiggins 3. I think the Dort 3-point attempt here is the best outcome here. But Shai changes the math of this because this is an 80% shot if Cat is not overplaying this Shai Gilgeous-Alexander drive. And I keep saying that Cat has to do that and he can't play the drop. Ends up in a dunk, like I said. And yeah, here's an example. Nobody really out of position. It's just, what can you do? He knifes through two guys and he makes that shot every time. Gets the foul there too. Again, high pick and roll. This is what happens. Precious Achiuwa doesn't play this hard enough. That's what happens when you don't play Shai hard. And I understand saying that, hey, Jalen Williams, because there's going to be a shot later in the game where he's wide open in this exact spot. And you're going to be like, hey, you don't want him to shoot that 3. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will make this shot 95% of the time. And maybe that's even underestimating how often he's going to make it. Jalen Williams will make that shot 36% of the time. One shot is significantly better than the other. Not much you can say about that. Deflected pass that ends up into a 33-footer. And then, another one. Fast break. Fast break defense is the Wild West. Neither of these guys, Brunson, McBride, neither of them have any chance. Unless Brunson gets all the way over here, gets a charge. If so, Wiggins is definitely just getting a open 3. Neither of these guys have a chance against that guy. And that's why he's shooting 78% at the rim. Ends up in a Knicks score. This play was rough. Okay. This is Deuce McBride's guy. And Shamet sees McBride not watching him. And as Kenrich Williams cuts, Shamet stays with him, and Isaiah Joe's flying all the way up here. Now, what could happen here is this is a switch, but this is clearly not communicated. So clearly in game planning pregame, the Knicks did not plan to do this. And I don't think they would. It's Isaiah Joe. You're not planning for this guy unless you're in a playoff series where you're playing this team every other day for 2 weeks. But Shamit either caught ball watching or they need to communicate better here on this, because this is not. I will say enough about sometimes the process is there, but the results aren't there. Here, this is a lack of process, and the results are also not there for Isaiah Joe, making what is an easy shot for him. Now here, this is process is fine. Ice him. I think Precious plays this fine. He could play it a little bit harder, but like as soon as you see Joe go further back, step back three from, a good shooter but not a great creator. Paint's kind of there. That's great shot making. And there's some great shot making in this game. There's some poor defense. This is some poor defense here from Shamit again. Just gets obliterated on a backdoor cut. Shamit with the N1. And then I think this is another one right here. Payne this time. I think those are probably two of the guys who I like. They're going to get cut from an NBA rotation come playoff time, but like those are NBA veterans. Those are like unexcusable mistakes. This play right here is great offense. Some of it's a miscommunication. Some of it I think is really good play by Jalen Williams at the top of the ball here in him and Hartenstein. You just reverse. I guess Hartenstein was always set up this way, but Cat needs to come further up here because what ends up happening, Hart is the one who ends up stepping up to this 3-point attempt. I don't know. I guess that Cat was trying to come cut off a drive that just wasn't there. And then Isaiah Joe, wide open for three. Cat needs to step up further to take this shot away, because then Hart doesn't have to come take away Williams, and then Isaiah Joe's not wide open for three. Even if this is like a predetermined switch, I do not hate these matchups. But Cat needs to step up further, and I think a lot of what happens is hesitancy with driving players. Not letting these guys drive, I think, is a big part of things. But a lot of the times when they played aggressively to take the ball out of hands, the Thunder just ended up making the right plays. And I think that more so comes down to good offense versus bad defensive process. Because I don't think the process was horrible. For context, the Thunder earlier in the season were like a middle of the pack offense and like the best defense in the world ever, and then now they're like a top 10 offense in total, and like over the past like month or two they've been like a top 3 offense, and then they've still been the best defense. I think this is by far the best team in the league, by the way. And like this is really good pick and roll defense. They've been icing ball handlers. It's a kind of aggressive high drop. That's fine. Williams, you'd play that because he's not as great of a 3-point shooter. I think that was a lot better than the last possession where Towns was way out of position. Hartenstein just hits a pretty tough 10-footer right there. And then, cross match from defense. Some of this game too, as you see, Knicks have 29 points. This is a team that, it's very uncommon for them to not have 29 after the first quarter. And you get these cross matches from misses on the defensive end of the floor or offensive end of the floor, and it hurts your defense, and that puts them in turn in bad positions on defense. This is the play I was talking with Williams. They run what looks like a DHO, gets caught. Brunson gets caught up here at the top of the floor. I think he's on a better athlete than him. What simply happens here, it happens from time to time. Cat takes away what I think is the right play, is to take away this pass right here. Williams takes the shot. I think at the end of the day, take it or leave it. I think I'd rather take away the layup there. Although, you know, the standstill three is also not a great decision. They make that play on having the better athlete on Brunson. Here, I think this actually isn't too bad of a situation for the Knicks. Having Brunson on Shea, he plays pretty good, defense. He maybe catches an elbow there, not sure. Tough shot making, and then Shea starts to get in a tough shot making sequence in a second. Here, another kick out. There's the 80% at the rim right there. Although I don't even think like this was horrible defense as well. Like you need to get that rebound potentially, but you can't control where the rebound goes after it's tipped out. So, and then here, this is what I would call just really good offensive play calling right here. They clear out with the shooter. This whole side of the floor is open, and Shea sprints into a dribble handoff, probably quicker than Bridges. So there's already that. Karl-Anthony Towns there's no right way for him to play this, and as you see, Hart's already occupied. Hart, not interestingly, is already on a shooter. Drives to the paint. They have to send this help. That's a layup if they don't send this help. Williams, they take away the first pass. Similar to Dort, I don't know. I guess I would have rather Williams taken it than Joe. Joe's probably a better shooter. Yeah. Hits the shot. Again, even if this is a 50% shot, right? Let's say it's an open catch and shoot three. 50%. It's a fair estimate. Shea makes this shot at the rim 70 to 80% of the time. Here, I mean, literally, this is another great pass. Great pass over the top. They get the ball out of his hands, and they play pretty good defense behind it. Shot making. It happens. This is an inexcusable one. Nobody picks up a guy. That's inexcusable. And then for the second half, it starts crazy, right? Like, Jesus. I think right here, it's another one. Like, really tough shot. And then I think Williams just goes and makes one here, too. Like, really, really difficult things to handle here on offense. And then, after a little bit in the third quarter, the game's really just out of reach. So I think a couple of important notes that I did have that I didn't mention in the intro, just in general with basketball, right? Think about it like a defensive back. That's how defensive players are in basketball. They're a defensive back in football. No matter what they do, they give up leverage somewhere. If they play it straight up, they give up a little bit of leverage every direction. If they play it really high up, they give up a ton of leverage towards the rim. If they play it really off, they give up the shot. If they play it one way or the other, they give up leverage in the other direction. And then I think the Thunder have a really good understanding of how to take away leverage and use advantages and leverage that you already give them. And I think that's an important part. Hartenstein, an amazing screen setter. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has like unreal bend to his game that allows him to just shift in and out of lanes. And there's a reason this team is so good, and they kill everybody. And I think this Knicks team specifically is really unequipped to guard players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Trae Young and other really quick, smaller guards, even though Shea is not as small. His primary thing is, he shifts around and gets to the rim. I think this team is more well equipped to beat teams like Denver and Boston, Sacramento, because Karl-Anthony Towns' weaknesses on defense, although are still there, his strengths are more highlighted against teams that post up a ton, right? Boston was the highest post-up frequency team a year ago. Pretty consistent now, even with Porzingis kind of in and out of the lineup. And overall, I'm not like 100% concerned about the Knicks, but I think teams like the Thunder, the Hawks, the Cavs could put a lot of struggles for the Knicks defensively, and I think the Thunder and the Cavs' ability to switch everything really gives the Knicks problems on the offensive side of the floor as well. ultimately, I don't feel really too moved about this OKC game. It looked like they were very prepared, and the Knicks were not very prepared. Um, Overall, though, I do think the same way I've always felt about this defense, to where until Mitchell Robinson's back, it just kind of has to just survive, and there's no way that it's going to ever be good until he's back. But when he's back, it adds an element of rim saving shot attempts that they do not have, because Karl Anthony Towns is game in and game out going to be a worse defensive player than the opponent's center. This is a team that infuriates me as a fan to watch, but it also does excite me with time to time. I think that their offense is borderline unstoppable.